Trump's new plan for forcibly displacing over 2 million Palestinians from Gaza is actually not new, and it's not his. Moreover, it's a deliberate distraction from the genocide and the absolute need for accountability. Ethnically cleansing Gaza is Israel's old plan that Trump is now duly and obsessively trying to market. Days into the start of Israel's genocide in October 2023, a leaked Israeli Ministry of Intelligence document revealed a plan for ethnically cleansing Gaza. Not to be outdone and to make forced displacement sound normal in comparison, on 5 November 23, Israel's Minister of Heritage from the Jewish Power Party suggested dropping a nuclear bomb on the Gaza ghetto. Israel's ultimate goal in its ongoing genocide in Gaza remains to ethnically cleanse our people again in a 21st century Nakba of dispossession, demolition, displacement, and utter dehumanization. Planning to forcibly displace Palestinian survivors of genocide in the illegally occupied Gaza Strip constitutes not just a war crime, but a continuation of the genocide, which not many are focusing on. It's a desperate attempt also to normalize Israel's live stream genocide and to achieve, through US imperialist bullying, what Israel's military prowess has utterly failed to accomplish after 15 months of genocide. Another fact that's never mentioned, Israel has actually failed to achieve its objectives. In fact, only 4% of Jewish Israelis believe that Israel's goals were fully achieved in Gaza, according to a recent poll. As early as December 23, the US defense establishment actually warned Israel of such a strategic defeat. Like all settler colonies, Israel has long desired to exterminate the indigenous people of Palestine, if it could get away with it. A recent error by Israel's censors has accidentally revealed secret documents exposing Israel's first Prime Minister, David Ben-Gurion's conscious decision to wipe out Palestinian villages during the 1948 Nakba, as a necessary condition to create what Israeli human rights organization B'Tselem today calls a regime of Jewish supremacy from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. In a particularly shocking testimony of an Israeli soldier reported in the now defunct Israeli paper Davar, he described what his fellow Israeli soldiers perpetrated in the Palestinian village of Al-Dawayima in 1948. Educated and well-mannered commanders, he says, who were considered good guys, became base murderers. And this, not in the storm of battle, but as a method of expulsion and extermination. The fewer the Arabs who remain, the better. End of quote. This remains the slogan of the Zionist settler colonial movement. So fast forward to 2008, when Labour Party, the lefties, the nice guys, leader Matan Velnai threatened Palestinians with a bigger Holocaust if resistance groups did not stop their armed retaliation to Israel's siege and violent attacks on Gaza. So when Israeli leaders today drool over ethnically cleansing most of Gaza to re-establish illegal settlements there, they're being honest representatives of the founding principles of Zionism and Zionist settler colonialism. Those principles are in full display in Israel's intensifying gradual ethnic cleansing of the West Bank. Israeli War Minister Israel Katz has referred to the military attack on Jenin, for instance, as, quote, the first lesson from the method of repeated raids in Gaza, end of quote. Israeli Finance Minister Smotrich, a self-declared fascist homophobe, has incited fanatic colonial violence against Palestinians in the West Bank, saying, quote, Nablus and Jenin need to look like Jabalia, end of quote. Israel's name for its murderous attack in the West Bank is called Iron Wall. This refers to a booklet by the same title published in 1923 by Jabotinsky, a key Zionist leader from the right wing, who honestly wrote in it, Zionist colonization must either stop or else proceed regardless of the native population, which means that it can proceed and develop only under the protection of a power that's independent of the native population, behind an iron wall which the native population cannot breach. Jabotinsky's Iron Wall, a pillar in Zionist settler colonialism in Palestine, has always included not just brute colonization of the land, but essentially a simultaneous colonization of the minds of the indigenous Palestinians with dread and despair. The erasure of the natives demands enacting not just genocide, but also epistemicide, the killing of knowledge, the native knowledge and knowledge about the natives. Still, the colonizer's will is always challenged with the will and agency of the colonized. Israel was forced to accept ceasefire terms that it had rejected for many months. The chief factor behind this must be the legendary sumud, resilience and resistance of the Palestinian people, supported by an exponentially growing global solidarity movement led by the BDS movement. While Palestinians have welcomed the ceasefire agreement with immense relief, we're keenly aware that it's only the necessary first step to end the genocide. Despite the typical militaristic bravado, it is far from evident that the Israeli establishment wishes to resume the ruthless bombardment and massacres in Gaza. Israel's economy is experiencing what 130 of its top economists describe as a spiral of collapse, with an almost unprecedented brain drain, a nose-diving tech industry, and a credit rating that is near junk levels, according to Moody's. Increasingly seen by investors as what we call a shutdown nation, Israel has ranked dead last among 50 countries in the just-released Nations Brand Index. The chairman of the Israel Export Institute admits, quote, BDS and boycotts have changed Israel's global trade landscape, end of quote. As evidenced by repeated UN votes, the overwhelming majority of nations today see Israel as a rogue state that has not only exterminated tens of thousands of Palestinians in Gaza and in a few weeks killed thousands in Lebanon and occupied large swaths of Syria, but is simultaneously bulldozing the very tenets of international law. Israel's prime minister is wanted by the ICC for war crimes and crimes against humanity. The ICJ, as was mentioned, in January 24 decided Israel is plausibly committing genocide, and in July 24 ruled that the occupation is illegal and Israel is practicing apartheid. Israel's total criminality and impunity are beginning to be met with relentless efforts to enforce accountability at all levels. This all explains Israel's heightened vulnerability to BDS tactics, especially now. Palestinians have no illusions, though, that justice will shine on us from the ICJ or the UN. We have international law and the ethical high ground on our side as an indigenous people resisting a depraved genocidal system of oppression to achieve our rights. Ethics and the law are necessary in our and any other liberation struggle, but they are never sufficient. To resist and abolish a system of oppression, the oppressed invariably need power as well. People power, effective solidarity power, grassroots power, intersectional coalition power, media power, cultural power, peaceful disruption power, strategic litigation power, among other forms. When the Palestinian consensus calls for BDS, we're not begging for charity. We're calling for meaningful solidarity. And above both, we're demanding an end to complicity, to do no harm. Unspeakable criminality and shameless complicity must be met with inexorable accountability. As the struggle that abolished apartheid in South Africa has shown, ending state, corporate, and institutional complicity in Israel's regime of oppression, especially through the nonviolent tactics of BDS, is the most effective form of solidarity. BDS is led by the largest coalition Palestinian society. It's inspired by the South African anti-apartheid struggle and the US civil rights movement, and it's rooted in a century of Palestinian popular resistance. It aims at ending Israel's occupation, settler colonialism, and apartheid, and most importantly, upholding the right of Palestinian refugees to return and receive reparations. Anchored in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the BDS movement categorically opposes all forms of racism, including anti-Palestinian racism, Islamophobia, and anti-Semitism. There's nothing Jewish about Israel's occupation, ethnic cleansing, apartheid, or genocide, and therefore there's nothing anti-Jewish in countering those oppressions and systems and structures of oppression to achieve Palestinian freedom. Over the last 20 years, the movement has built a massive network worldwide, supported by trade unions, farmers' unions, racial, social, gender, and climate justice movements, together representing tens of millions. One very important point in the BDS movement we always advocate is at the institutional level, city councils, universities, and so on, to push for intersectional ethical investment guidelines and ethical procurement guidelines that are not country-specific, not conflict-specific. So let's say all progressive movements at a university push for ethical procurement guidelines, ethical investment guidelines. That means this university will not have contracts with companies involved in grave human rights violations, atrocity crimes anywhere in the world. Period. Once that passes, now I would love to see an administrator in a university saying, no, we want to have unethical relations. This should be the easiest thing to really push. Pressuring government, your government, which is deeply complicit, to end its shameful complicity, beginning with the military embargo. This is a matter of duty, not discretion. And someone should tell your government that it's not a matter of your opinion, whether you like it or not. You are obliged to do this under international law. To defeat Trumpism, Israeli genocidal exceptionalism, and the rising wave of fascism worldwide, broad tent, inclusive, anti-racist alliances are more important than ever. This is not just an ethically desired strategy to unite racial, climate, social, gender, and economic justice movements to build a critical mass of people power that's needed, but the current threat to humanity shows that the intersectional unity of those struggles has truly become an existential need. Egyptian and Greek mythologies mention the phoenix rising from the ashes. Palestinians in Gaza have shown that this is not entirely a myth. With the shaky ceasefire barely holding, hundreds of thousands of Palestinian genocide survivors have emerged from the carnage in this land, whose civilization goes back 4,000 years, marching to the north of Gaza with hope, despite knowing that almost all their homes, roads, services, schools, hospitals have been wiped out. The real aspiration of most of them is to keep marching to real home, to where their families had been ethnically cleansed during the 1948 Nakba. The Palestinian phoenix of Gaza is emerging from under the rubble to reassert to the world that we shall never bow to oppressors. We shall continue to resist oppression and insist on defending our inalienable rights. But in mythology, a phoenix needs sunlight to resurrect itself. And in our case, that sunlight is blocked by dark, heavy clouds of complicity. Principled and strategic solidarity is crucial to dissipate those dark clouds so we can rise to our inevitable emancipation. Thank you.